the version that you have in your mind of me, I'm not her. Or the holiday season is coming and I know what that means. It means loads of family members. It means being around loads of people that trigger me or whatever. You're okay. It's okay. You might get triggered a couple times. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of A Black Girl's Orbit. You have entered a Black Girl's Orbit. I am your host. I will be your host from now until forever. We are in episode 3. It's nice to see you. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope that you are having or you are going to have the most amazing holiday period. And, just being around the people that make you happy, being around the people who make you feel like life is easy, Because we're going to talk about some things. But first, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has showed so much love on the last episode. We're only 2 episodes, this is the 3rd episode, so we're only 2 episodes in, and honestly, I didn't think I'd make it this far. I mean, I wanted to, I had the intention to, and I was going to put all my effort into making it this far, but it's not easy, trying to juggle this and baby and just life in general and stuff like that, and it's just, it's when you're working towards something, and I talked a little bit in the last episode about instant gratification. We want that instant gratification, and when you don't feel like you're gonna get that, or you don't feel like you are at that level where you're worthy of that instant gratification, because that's what it is. It's not that you can't get the instant gratification. It's the fact that I didn't feel like, from a fellow perfectionist, I was under the impression that this needs to be fixed. I could have a better camera. I could, have said that better. I could have explained it in a better way. And the love that everyone has shown me on the last episode, I am so grateful, and I'm glad that even in what I think isn't perfect, and still showing up and uploading it, and still feeling like I know my message is there, but maybe I could have said it better, and the feedback just being no, you hit the nail on the head, what you said makes sense. That is all the reassurance I need. I just needed someone to be yeah, what you said makes sense. Yes, we agree with you. Yes, I needed to hear this. Or no, you're not alone in the fact that as mums, we want to dedicate our lives to our children, but we can't. We have to prioritize ourselves, and society seems to make us feel like we shouldn't prioritize ourselves. So I am so grateful and so glad that the last episode was received the way it was, because this one's about to get a little bit deep and a little bit heavy, because like I said, the holiday period is here, and I hope you're spending it with someone who, or people, or loved ones, and they don't have to be family members. And for me, this holiday season specifically, last year my son was he's born October, so December he was still teeny tiny baby. I was in the depths of motherhood. I wasn't thinking about, and I wasn't reflecting on all the things that I could have had and should have wanted, and what I maybe thought about. I just wasn't thinking about any of that. It was okay, I'm got my baby, let me take care of my baby, and Christmas will pass and New Year's will pass, and then we'll figure it out as it goes. Time was just going and happening. But this year I feel like everything has come to a head, where it's okay, you've settled into motherhood now. You're a year and a bit in, the holiday season is coming. How do you actually feel about who's around you, and how you're showing up, and the family that you are creating, and the life that you are creating, and the space that you are creating? How do you feel about the people that are around you during this time, and the people that maybe you don't necessarily want around but are family, and the roles that you have to play? Because I feel like we can, in everyday life, we are able to get on with things and just play those roles for people in certain ways, or we don't have to answer the phone, we don't have to check up as much. When people ask us for things, we can just do the thing and keep it moving, and we don't think about it as much. And when the holiday period comes, we get family members who tend to ask a lot of us, or we have to be around a multitude of them, or, you know, they want to be in your life, but they don't check up on you throughout the year. Like, that's what happens when the holiday period starts to come, well, for me anyway. And it's making me reflect on the fact that I don't have to perpetuate, or I don't have to be in those roles that people ask of me. I don't have to live on the perception and the bubble and the person I was showing up as for certain people. I'm not that person anymore. And I'm changing and evolving. And now I have my own child, and there's things that I don't want him to experience, or maybe family members that I don't necessarily care for him to be around. And I don't care if family's family, and I don't care if blood is thicker than water. Like, why do I have to? I don't have to. I don't have to. I don't want to, actually. Maybe I just don't want to. And I wanted to talk about it because a couple of months ago, there was a TikTok about someone saying, like, oh, if you don't want the life that your parents have, then maybe we should start decentering our parents, right? And I made a TikTok based on that, about the 3 ways that I was going about decentering my parents, because I feel like even if you don't have a traumatic or negative relationship with your parents, you at some point have to learn how to be your own person and stop. Well, some people rely on their parents until, you know, whatever age. And I mean, that's great. They should. But for me, it was like, okay, maybe you don't want the life that your parents want. And then how are you going to go about getting the life that you do want? And how are you going to go about respecting their wishes, but also your own, and maybe prioritizing your own over your parents and the life that they wanted for you versus the life that you wanted for you. So we're, we're gonna get into that. But yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's not easy to make that decision where you know that there are people in your life that you love and you care for, but what they want for you and the version of you that they have painted, and the picture of you that they have painted in their heads, is not actually who you are anymore, or wherever. And trying to show them that without being disrespectful, being, you know, rude and hurtful, without making them feel like you don't love them, or maybe without cutting them fully off. Because I used to feel like, so I don't have an extremely traumatic relationship with my parents, but I don't have the best relationship with them at times. We do better when there's space, right? We do better when there is space between us. And I didn't understand that for a long time. For a long time, I felt like, and I'm still young, I'm only 23, so this is maybe me like at 16, 17, when you want full independence and your parents are like, maybe not yet. And that's you figuring out yourself and figuring out who you are versus who your parents think you are. And during that time period, I thought like, okay, the only way to show them that I am who I think I am, and I am who I want to be, instead of who you are painting me out to be and who you want me to be, is just to cut you off completely. And the older I'm getting, now I have a child, maybe that's not the answer. But I also have to respect my boundaries and uphold my boundaries, and, you know, give myself grace in those areas where it's like, I need to pull back. I'm showing up too much for them, or I'm doing too much for them. And you can get sucked into it very easily. But I don't have we do better when there's space. Me and my parents and some of my family members, we do better when there's space, right? And during that young period of time, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, I was like, if I just leave, right? If I just cut them off completely, and then they can't tell me, like, they can't give me any. And during that time, I realized, well, maybe actually it's less them and more you. Like, actually, you rely on them quite a bit, or actually, you haven't found your sense of self yet outside of your parents. And so you're teetering on this line of, I want to be independent and, you know, decenter my parents, and I don't want the life that they want for me, but also I'm calling them all the time. to ask them their opinions, and I'm still relying on them for certain things. Not that it's bad to rely on them for certain things, but you need to figure out what it is you actually want, right? So in the TikTok that I made about decentering parents, I said there was 3 ways that I went about it, and it's a learning process. It takes a long time, right? But I said, okay, what life do I want? If I keep saying to myself, I'm not who they think I am, and I'm this person, and I'm that. Okay, so who are you? Let's actually decide who we are and who we want to be. Okay, Zara, if you don't want the life that your parents want for you, then who do you want to be? You know, like who do you want to show up as? What life are you striving for? And then I had to sit down and decide, okay, cool. Maybe there are a little things that overlap. Like, my parents want me to have a loving family. I want to have a loving family too. Maybe they wanted me to have it a bit later in life, and I'm having it a bit earlier than they thought I would, but it doesn't mean I can't still have that, right? Or they wanted me to have a good education. I still went to university. While they wanted me to stay close, I wanted to go a little bit further, right? So there are things that do overlap, and instead of me saying like, oh, this is what they want, no, I still wanted to do those things, just maybe in a different way from exactly how they had laid it out for me, or how they wanted to lay it out for me, right? So once we decide who we want to be, and that takes a lot of introspection, it takes a lot of removing, because a lot of things can be deep rooted. Like, you may not even realize that you're living the life that your parents want for you until you look and you're like, oh, actually, the reason why I'm so angry at them is because I am living out the life that they want, and I'm not happy. I don't want to do this. And I haven't decided that I'm not going to do this, right? So you have to look at yourself and be like, okay, where am I now? Did I actually decide to be here? Or did I just live out what they wanted for me? Okay, cool. Right? Okay, cool. Now we have to make a decision. If it's a no, I didn't want to be here, I'm just doing what they wanted. Cool. How are we going to rectify this now? What do we want? What does it look like? And how are we going to rectify it? How are we going to change the decisions and the path that we're going down to something that we want to do, and something that we are, more happy with, and for the life that we do actually want at the end of it? Cool. And maybe that takes, doing more hobbies, finding out what you do like, doing more journaling, doing more journal prompts, maybe getting a therapist and figuring out what's your subconscious thinking and what's your parents' subconscious thinking, and what's just been taught to you from your parents and your family, and what's actually you. Like, sometimes our values aren't even our own and we didn't even know. Like, it can get deep. It can get deep. So we have to figure that out, right? Once we figure that out, we have to learn to make decisions for ourselves, because it can be easy to say, I don't want, and blame. I don't want this. Like, I didn't want that. And I just did what you wanted for me. It's easy. It's easy. And I feel like between 16 and 18, I was just blaming my parents. Like, it's your fault. I'm not who you think I am. And it's your fault for showing and teaching and whatever. It's all you. And it's like, maybe a little bit it is them, and they need to give some more room for me to grow and evolve and be who I am going to actually be. But at some point, you're still young, but at some point at 18, I realized I can actually make decisions for myself, and I have to follow them through. And if I fail, I fail. Can't run back to parents. And it's not that they wouldn't let me run back, because parents are there to allow you to come back and grovel, and that's what they should be there for. They should always be your safety net. But you have to stand on your decisions. You have to make decisions for yourself, and you have to learn to trust in yourself. And I think this is maybe figuring out who you are first is the hardest bit. But after that, learning to trust who you are now and who you want to be, and make decisions in sight of that, is also very hard. You have to decide for yourself. Okay, left or right. Can't call mum now. Can't call dad now and ask him if I should take a left or a right. You can, and they can give you their opinions, but ultimately you have to be the deciding factor. You have to make that decision and you have to follow through with it. And if you fall flat on your face and if you fail, you have to get up and try again, because that is the whole point of finding yourself for yourself and not who your parents want you to be, right? And I left for university at 18, and I didn't take a gap year. I just went straight to university, and I left and I went 4 hours away from my family. And I did that because I felt like I just need to get out of the house, and I still want to go to university, but I need to be as far away from my parents as possible. I just need to get out, right? I just need new environment, new people, new spaces. And as much as that's exactly what I needed, I also needed to learn who I am away from my family and away from who it is they want me to be, because you can say you want to be yourself as much as you want until you actually have to be yourself, and it's like, oh, who is myself? Who am I again? What food do I like to eat? Now I have to cook for myself. Now I have to lock my own doors. Now I have to pay my own rent. Now I have to make my own money. Oh, okay. No, no one's coming to save me. Okay. All right. I guess we're gonna do that then, right? And that's what leaving. I feel like that's what leaving London, because I live in London. That's what leaving London will teach you. If you go to university outside of London, I think you don't learn that the same way as if you was to stay in London, in my opinion. If you are close to home and you are trying to learn how to be independent, if you are in close proximity of your safety net, it's very hard to stay independent. And sometimes, like me, I'm the type of person, I just need to rip the band-aid off. I just need to get uncomfortable, and then I'll figure it out. And I tend to put myself in those uncomfortable situations because I know that about myself. I don't necessarily tend to hide from uncomfortable situations. It's like, okay, cool, Zara, you want to grow? Let's go grow. Like, let's go grow, right? So that's what I did. So I left for university and I had to figure things out. I had to figure out what food I like to eat, because now I was cooking for myself. Like, even simple things like that, you might think that you are being so independent and so you know exactly who you are, but it's like, even down to, do you know what food you like to eat? Do you know what time you like to go to bed? Do you know what exercises you like to do? Do you know what books you like to read? Do you know what shows you like to watch? All of those things make up who you are, right? All of those things make up who you are, and you need to know what your life looks like. What career do you want? What jobs do you want? What hobbies do you like to do? All of those things make up who you are, and you have to get very clear on that very quickly. And especially if you're at university, you have to get very clear on that very quickly, because you can just kind of glide through doing the bare minimum. And if you want to grow, you need to figure it out, right? Or you can just call your parents at every turn and every head. I had a lot of friends like that, who was every decision that they needed to make, they didn't know how to cook, so every time they needed to cook, they were calling a parent. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that, but so long as you also know who you are within it. Does that make sense? Like, you can't get lost in fully relying on them for everything. But like I said, nothing wrong with it. It's just not what I wanted to do while I was there. So I had to figure it out. And I feel like those that I was initially calling all the time, and then it was like, okay, Zara, gain some independence. Gain some independence. See how long you can go. Check in, of course, but see how long you can go without asking your mum for something. Like, how do you do, Mum, if you had to do, how long can you go without doing that? I had to do that to myself. And then I also had to make decisions and trust that I'm making the right decision. And when you're cooking, sometimes, like, even in the bare minimum, like at the smallest thing, cooking and then being like, okay, how much salt? Oh damn, that was too much salt. It's giving a bit salty. Okay, cool. Like, Okay, cool. Still gonna eat it. Okay, cool. Still gonna cook it though. Like, I'm gonna make it next week and then we can try again. Right? And it's just this process of learning who you are and who you want to be and where we're trying to go and how we're going to get there. And understanding that your failures doesn't mean that you don't know yourself. It's learning yourself, understanding yourself. And I feel like that's a lifetime thing. When you stop living in the version that your parents want you to be, you start to understand that you're ever changing, you're ever evolving. Who I might have wanted and thought I was at 18 is not who I am at 23. Like I said, at 16, I was like, I'm gonna cut all my parents off. When I was at 18, I was like, I'm gonna get as far away from them as I possibly can. Then I got there and I was like calling them all the time. And I was like, right, okay, actually, maybe I do rely on my parents quite a bit. maybe they do actually do a lot for me. Maybe they do, and then you start to see it in a different way. Then you leave university and now you're 21 and it's like, okay, career. Like, I have to find a job by myself. I have to go to interviews by myself. I have to pick the career and place that I want to be. And, I decided to do something that was completely not what I went to university for, because I just needed a year off. I just needed a year to figure out what I wanted from my career. And my parents were maybe disappointed. They were a little bit disappointed. Like, you went to uni, you did this thing. Okay, cool. Like, get the ball rolling. And I was like, no, I need a break. I need a break. For me and my mental health and my sanity, and for me, I need a break. Okay, cool. Took a break. Worked, but I took a break from like constantly feeling like there's a deadline that I need to have, and I went to work with some children and the children made me happy and I was happy. I was happy. Got to see children all day. I was happy. Okay, and that's what I needed for a while. Then I got pregnant and it was like, all right, now what? You're going to have a child. Was you prepared to have a child? Are you ready to have a child? Your parents aren't necessarily ready and prepared for you to have a child. You're the eldest daughter, and that's a big part of my journey. I'm the eldest daughter. My sister is 12 years younger than me. So not only am I the eldest daughter, I am the eldest daughter who kind of took mummy role in some sense with my sister. So she relied on me a lot. My parents relied on me a lot and expected certain things from me and wanted certain things from me. And it was like, oh, now you're pregnant. I don't know if my parents were just like, we don't know what to do with this information, or if it was a thing where it's not what they planned. I guess it was a bit of both. Like, they didn't know what to do with the information. They didn't plan for that in my life. And I was like, well, I was always going to have children. So, like, I always saw myself being a mum. And who says I can't still do all the things that I had planned and stuff to be to do and be what I wanted and who I was going to be and who the version of me that I saw in my future. But parents will be parents. They will have their opinions. And at that point, I had to really go 10 toes down on like who I am and who I've decided I am and who I've decided I want to be. And sometimes it looks like you're being disrespectful, dishonorable, or disregarding their wishes for you, or like being rebellious, and however it is that they might see you and perceive you. At some point you have to be okay with the fact that they might not, they might not, their vision of you is already not what you want. So you've already decided that you don't want what they want, and while you're already deciding you don't want what they want, now you start making decisions towards what you want, which can seem like you're going against what they want and their decisions. And then you started to trust yourself more. So within you trusting yourself more, you've become more confident. You've become more confident in your decisions. And for some parents, that's like an extra part of disrespect. Like, oh, you're making these decisions that we don't abide by, and now you're like happy with them, like you're happy in your decisions. Well, yeah, I mean, isn't that the goal? For some parents it is, and for some parents it isn't. Like, they would prefer you to just do what they think is best, even if doing what you think is best is making you happy. And I guess that can be hard. It is hard, and I'm sure it's hard for a lot of people to try and like figure out how to still love and respect their parents, while also, trusting themselves and making decisions for themselves based on where they want to be, which might be different from where their parents want them to be and who their parents want them to be. And, you have to get comfortable with the fact, because you do just have to be comfortable with the fact and okay with the fact that they might disown you. They might disown you for some people. They might really be angry about it. They might, react in a certain way from you making your decisions and your choices for your path and your life. And at some point, hopefully, maybe they will come back and, you would have made a success out of yourself. Or, you tried and you failed and they'll still be there for you. But you have to now go all in on you, and you can still love and respect your parents. And that's what I had to learn, and that's what I'm learning in this season. I can still love and respect them. I can still show up for them. Maybe not how they wanted me to show up. Maybe not in the full capacity that they wanted me to show up. Maybe not at every beck and call, because that tends to be like what they want from the eldest daughter. Do everything. Just figure everything out for them whenever they need you. And you might not be able to be there like that for them in that capacity, but you can still be there. Maybe sometimes you have to listen and not say anything. Maybe sometimes they might rant about, all the things that they wanted for you and wanted from you. You didn't show up and you've been disrespectful, and you just have to go, okay, I understand. To you, that's how I seem. I understand. To you, that's how I show up. I understand. To you, it seems like I'm not doing enough, or I'm not following the right path, or I'm not making the right decisions. And that's okay. You learn that sometimes the high road isn't cutting everybody off and starting from scratch. Sometimes the high road is being in situations where you might not say your full opinion, or where you might not say certain things that you're doing or working on, or where you might not speak about all the things that you're doing or your passions, because they might not necessarily align with what that family member has for you, or what that family member thought for you, or whatever, just to get through those situations. Now, that can be hard when you still have to abide by your boundaries. Trying to find a middle ground in that sense, knowing that you still want people in your lives, you still want those relationships, you still want to spend the holidays with your family, but you don't want to completely bypass your boundaries by allowing them to walk all over you, or allowing them to just rant on to you about all the things you haven't done, or where you've been, or what you haven't done or showed up as, or that you could have been a doctor and you're not a doctor, and whatever, right? Whatever your family's thing is, it can be hard still abiding by your boundaries and still showing up for yourself and still making decisions that you're happy with, while also giving them grace. Maybe it's giving them grace. Like, you want to give them grace, but you don't want them to dampen your confidence and your trust in yourself and how far you have come to work on that. And I feel like that's what the holidays is making me reflect on. I was like, okay, cool, I've done all this work, and I've got to a place where it's like I can be around family members, and I can be in rooms, and I can listen to people talk about, oh, she could have done this, she should have done that, we wanted her to do da 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 da, or like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you, and when the last time I saw you was this tall, and da 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 da. And it's like, yeah, but you don't check on me. You're big and grown. You don't check on me. You don't call me. You don't see if I'm okay. You didn't congratulate me on my baby. And now I might have to be around you, and I don't want to be here, but I'm here, right? And it's like trying to deal with that while not saying, okay, well, I just won't go at all, right? Like, where is the middle ground? And that's what the holidays makes me think of. That's what the holiday makes me think of, because we're getting older now. And I was watching the Deadass podcast. If you watch it, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's a husband and a wife, and they have like a family of 4 boys, and they were talking about how their generation can be the generation that was just like, I'm not putting up with all the isms that came from the generation before me or that came through my family, right? Because we tend to, as black people, this might be more people, but I'm black. So I know in black families, we tend to take the isms of our parents, right? Like my uncle and my dad might have fallen out for some reason. All of a sudden, the kids don't talk. And I'm angry at my cousin because my dad doesn't like your dad, but I don't even know why I don't like you. I just don't like you because it's an ism of my parents, right? And their generation, because they are maybe a generation or two above me, their generation was like, well, I'm just not gonna, then I'll just cut myself off completely from the family. Like, I'm not dealing with the isms. I don't want to deal with your ism because your dad doesn't like my dad and this, da, da, da. I don't talk to no one, right? And I'm learning that maybe completely cutting everyone off also isn't the best way to go as well, because we don't want to get to a point where no one speaks to anyone. Like, that's not what I want. I don't want no one to speak to anyone. I know, creating your own boundaries and standing by your own boundaries and creating your own family and having the family that you love and care to be around. That might be friends, it might be godparents, it might be, your chosen family. 100% respect and, protect your boundaries and the life that you want to live in your family. 110%. But maybe that does look like also allowing room and grace for people to have their isms. It's hard, it's difficult, because some people will still say, well, I just don't want to be around them at all, I'm just going to cut them off. And yeah, maybe that's the way to go. But for example, I was sitting in therapy. I was sitting with my therapist and I was saying, like, that's how I felt, right? And she was like, well, technically, have you then really grown? Have you really healed? Have you really understood and overstood certain situations and the isms if you are so ready to cut people off because even being around them or being in those environments triggers you, because you aren't necessarily healing and growing from those situations if you just being around those people trigger you so badly. And I was like, okay, maybe maybe I'm not at that place yet. Like, maybe I haven't healed and grown. Maybe me completely wanting to cut everybody off is because they trigger that and I still haven't healed that, right? Or I still haven't got over the ism, or I still don't feel like I fully know who I am. So when they say like, oh, you don't know who, it's like, oh, maybe I don't. Like, maybe I need to sit down and check it with, maybe I'm not doing what I should be doing. Like, they trigger that in you, right? They trigger the insecurity in you because you are still insecure. They wouldn't trigger it if it wasn't there, right? They wouldn't trigger the trauma response if the trauma response wasn't still active and present, right? And it doesn't mean that you're gonna fully not get triggered at all, but those are the moments and times, like the holiday seasons when you are around loads of family, are the moment in times where you have to be like, oh, that got triggered. Okay, cool. Need to work on that. Oh, that family member still triggers this within me. Need to work on that. And we're not talking about like deep rooted traumatic experiences, because if you have family members that have caused deep rooted traumatic experiences, remove yourself. Completely remove yourself. Like, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the small isms, right? Or maybe the big isms that still don't outweigh the love and care that you do have for those people in that family and your family members. But if the isms outweigh the care, then get yourself out. Like, change your environment, keep it moving, keep it stepping, right? But if you still do want to hold space for them and you do love being around them and you do want to, soak up all the holidayness, and I had to be like, okay, am I at a point where I don't want my child to have anything to do with my family, because that's not what I want, right? But my therapist was saying like, no, these are the times when you have to bring it on. Like, okay, cool. Like, I've done my work on myself. Let's see how well I've done. Like, is it going to trigger me? Is it going to bring up some stuff that I haven't fully healed with? Am I going to have to sit down afterwards and do a journal session? Maybe, probably, because I need to offload, right? But it's also going to allow me to be like, rah, like, my child is here now and he grows up and he gets to see it. He at least gets to experience it. He might not fully experience it, immerse himself in it, because I have my boundaries. And, we don't want to lose ourselves in it, because it's easy to lose ourselves in it. And it's easy to go back and be like, yeah, I'll do every single thing, and I'll be there every single thing, and I'll stay at your house every single day, because that's not what we want. We don't want that, right? We want to be able to hold space and have space for our families without dampering our boundaries, and without stepping all over who it is that we want to be, and stepping all over the dreams and goals that we have, right? So it's the in between, and it's teetering that line of, I'm going to be around them for this holiday period, and I'm going to do my best to be around them this season, and I'm going to allow my child to have his time with his family and his cousins and whoever, whatever, right? But I'm still going to uphold my boundaries, and I'm still going to check in with myself, and I'm maybe going to give a little bit of grace for the people that they are, and allow them to be where they are without it affecting me. Because most of the time, a lot of it is projection, right? It's them projecting their fears and their insecurities onto you, but you have to allow it to not trigger your fears and your insecurities, because you're working on them, right? And nobody's perfect. You might get triggered a couple times. I'm gonna get triggered a couple times, but that's the moment for reflection. Like, okay, cool, still need to work on that. Okay, cool, maybe still not fully over that. Okay, cool, no, actually that person needs me to keep my boundaries, and I need to not be around them. Like, definitely not, right? And so that's what they were talking about on the podcast, and it really like hit home for me, because yes, it is finding that happy medium. And no, I don't want to be the one who's cut everybody off, even though some people I'm going to cut off. But maybe I want to be in between that, and what does that look like, and how can I honor myself and them, within that. And ultimately that is being the bigger person, right? When you are able to understand that people have their things, but you don't need to go and want to change them or change yourself by listening and hearing their things, or being affected by their things, right? Even though they might project their things onto you. It's difficult, right? And so I think it's a continuous conversation with family, and it can be a continuous conversation with family. And you will have some family members who are open to hearing your side of the story, and open to changing, and open to being accountable. And then you'll have some that just aren't, and you have to try and like understand that and overstand that. And sometimes you don't want to be the bigger person, and I fully get that. I fully get that. This year I was like, do I have to be the bigger? I just don't want to go. Maybe I don't want to go. Maybe don't want to do it, but maybe I do. And if I do, what are we going to do about that? How are we going to regulate our emotions and ourselves and our expectations? And sometimes it's that as well. It's you have an expectation of a family member that they don't have for themselves. They don't uphold it for themselves. So why should you expect something from them that they don't expect of themselves? And learning to manage those expectations, and learning to manage what you wanted, right? So at some point I had to realize, I'm so angry because I wanted this type of family, and I wanted my parents to react like this, and I wanted them to be caring and loving like this, but that's just not how they show up. And really and truly, you just have to understand and decide, am I okay with how they actually show up, and who they actually are, and who they actually are being? And if the answer is no, then remove them. If the answer is yes, or I can give grace to them, or I can uphold, space for them in where they are at this current moment, then cool, right? But we have to understand who they are, like, in reality. And it's hard because we have expectations. I had expectations of what I wanted my mum to be like. I had expectations of what I wanted my dad to be like. I had expectations of what I wanted my pregnancy to be like, and how I wanted my family to treat me while I was pregnant, and all of that stuff. And it was like, actually, this is what's happening. This is what has happened. This is what you're going through. And sometimes you have to grieve it. Like, grieve what you expected and what you wanted, and the version of them that you had painted, and they have to grieve the version of you that they had painted in their minds, and grieve the life that they wanted for you as well, right? It doesn't go one way. They're grieving too. They had a child that they saw these great big things for, and, expected to be a certain way. And I came and said, no, actually, that's not me. Actually, the version of you, the version that you have in your mind of me, I'm not her. I'm not her. Actually, this is me. Like, this is me. And you can learn to love and live with this and grieve that and kick it out, or you can cut me off, right? And I'm still going to be the version of me that I am, right? And I had to do the same thing for my parents. They're going to be them. Doesn't matter how hard I want them to change. They're going to be them. And I had to grieve what I wanted and what I thought that I wanted parents to be and act like and look like, and be like, okay, these are my parents. I still love them. Cool. I'm going to insert my boundaries and insert what I'm okay to deal with and what I'm not okay to deal with. And I'm going to decide, okay, cool. At this point, I'm done, right? But up until there, I can hold grace for them. I can hold space for them, and I can still care and love and respect them, right? But this has been real. I feel like we got a little bit deep. So if we recap, if you are decentering your parents over this holiday period, or have been over this year or your lifetime, because it can take a lifetime, and you are worried, or in that place where you're like, oh, the holiday season is coming and I know what that means. It means loads of family members. It means being around loads of people that trigger me or whatever. You're okay. It's okay. You're doing well, and you might get triggered. But it's just learning how to deal with your emotions and regulate your emotions when you do get triggered, and it's a journey that we're on. And you are doing you're doing such a service to yourself by being in that environment and assessing what triggers you and what's happening, because it's teaching you where you are and what you're at and what you need to learn, and what you need to work on. Yeah, and you're learning to trust yourself and your decisions and your emotions, and check in with yourself, which is only going to make you better in the long run. But yeah. Merry Christmas again. I will see you next week. We'll be back here next week. This has been episode 3. Thank you for entering a Black Girl's Orbit. I mean, if you've made it this far, you might as well subscribe now. Like, I don't know what you're doing, love. Don't know what you're doing.